Good day there once again, viewers. This is your mate Kamikaze78 here, coming to you guys with some more, Planet Zoo content. Not gonna lie guys, I did not expect to be making a video for this game so soon after my first one, and while the last video didn't crack a huge amount of viewership, there were a lot of people who enjoyed it, and I figured, you know what, screw it. We're going to get back and make some more Planet Zoo videos, considering I've been absolutely adoring the game as of late, so why the hell not? Let's get straight back into it and do another build here on video. So today's video, we're going to be building up an exhibit building. This is essentially a building that is going to house 9 total exhibits, as well as a food court area on the second floor. Now, whenever you go to a zoo, right, you often find a little reptile house or a building dedicated to snakes, lizards, frogs, that sort of stuff. This is essentially what that is, and I was actually inspired to do something like this by fellow YouTuber and much better Planet Zoo and all-round simulation gaming, player than me, Corrales. I watched him do something similar in his video, and I thought, you know what, I would love to attempt something like that in my zoo here. And that's essentially what we're doing here today, and there's also a link to this, guys, in the Steam workshop down below. So if you'd like to go ahead and actually support this model on the Steam workshop, I'd really appreciate it, and it's something that you guys can work with and make it your own in your own zoo. But guys, before we get into the specifics of the building and what I'm doing here, firstly, to my fellow Australians who are watching, Happy New Year. By the time this video goes out, I'm filming on New Year's Eve. We should very well be in 2020 and in the new decade. So, hope you guys are all out there having safe and responsible celebrations. Party hard, but party responsibly, is what I like to always say, especially with what is going on in the country right now, and I'm going to talk about that in just a jiffy. To all my friends who are on the northern side of the equator, guys, I hope you are all also having a happy New Year's Eve and celebrating responsibly and accordingly as well. Thank you all very much for an excellent 2019, and I look forward to seeing what 2020 provides us here on our channel. Anyway, the one thing I would like to mention, guys, is a huge shout out to the Australian bushfire services and the volunteer firefighters that are currently out on the field trying to desperately, and I mean desperately, contain what has definitely been probably the worst bushfire season that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and that is someone who's lived through the very brutal 2003 bushfires that hit my home state of Canberra. This is certainly a much more widespread event that is plaguing our country nowadays, and to the men and women who are on the field right now, taking time out of their holiday period to basically be on the ground and, help to protect a lot of Australian property from basically going up in flames. Guys, you have my undying gratitude, and to all of those who have been affected by these bushfires in a way that is less than positive, quite frankly, you have my condolences. This is seriously one of the worst bushfire crises that this country has ever faced, and yeah, look, it's time for change. But I'm not going to get political here in this video. That's not the place. This is not the place to do it in, so I'll try and remain as in good as graces as I possibly can, all things considered. Anyway, let's get on to the build here. I definitely had a vision for this build before I went into it. I wanted it to look fairly modern, but at the same time sort of stand as its own, and I really wanted to spend a lot of time applying what I've learned from previous builds in this game and really detailing the hell out of it. And I'll admit, there are a few rough edges that I wasn't totally satisfied with, to be honest. There were a few things that I thought I could have done a bit better, but overall, this is actually the build I've been very happy with, and that's why the video was so fucking long. This video is 45 minutes in length. This took me 4 hours to build. We did it entirely on a Twitch live stream, which, by the way, if you're not following me there, be sure to go hit the link in the description down below, guys, and join the Kamikaze crew on Twitch. It would be great to have you there. Anyway, as I was saying, this build took me about 4 hours to make, so hence why this is a very long video. I know that long YouTube videos are typically a bit difficult to sit through, but look, I've got nothing. I got nothing. This took me forever, and I wanted to share it with you guys, because this is certainly, as I said before, the project that I've enjoyed making the most since I started playing this game. And the first thing I really made sure to do differently, as opposed to my last build this time around, was really focus on starting my construction on the global axis, the world axis, if you will. Only because our black bear habitat that we built last week, we ran into the issue where I was building on its own axis, which I kind of had to do because I had to build it around a habitat, but then I had trouble lining up the buildings and the facilities with the path layout that I had. It got a bit messy from time to time. Those who watch the video will remember that very, very clearly. So I decided this time I'm going to build the actual structure on the world axis so I can line things up properly, and then from there I will look at moving it into the position that it needs to be moved into when it's going to be actually put into the zoo. So yeah, look, it was a bit of a struggle that was a bit of a hard lesson to learn the last time we did a build like this, but at the end of the day, it was a lesson that needed to be learned, and I'm happy I've learned it now. Now, you guys have seen me taking a chunk out of the wall here. Essentially, I was playing around with looking for a material that I could use as opposed to modern wood. I'd stuck with modern wood as pretty much all of my building materials throughout the entirety of the game up until this point, and I wanted to step out of my comfort zone a bit and sort of play around with something and try and come up with a building that mixed multiple materials but still fit with the general aesthetic of the zoo. And at this point I decided to go with plaster. Now the plaster wall on its own looks very, very drab. I'm not gonna lie, like, it's got no texture to it. It looks a bit too perfect, if you will. So you're gonna see me do a lot of detailing work here and just put pillars and columns and windows and just a whole bunch of stuff randomly everywhere, just to give the overall location that little bit of extra pop, just that little bit of, you know, a little bit of an extra element to stand out. And this is actually gonna be the first thing you see me do here. So what I've done here is I've used the existing grid to place down these stone walls, but then I've split it from the group, lowered it slightly, and then established a new group with a new grid that I can just place these stone walls around the building with, to give the building this sort of sense of there being a foundation, if you will. It helps to break up the plaster a bit and just, you know, gives that degree of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not texture, it's like realism. It's a sense of realism, because, yeah, sure, most buildings don't have a foundation sticking out of the ground, but I think this just plants the building into the ground. It says that, yes, this has been constructed from the ground up, and it has a purpose. It has a right to be there, if you will. I don't know really what I'm saying here, but at the end of the day, it works. I was actually really happy with the end result here. And it, you know, sort of gave the building a bit of extra pop that sort of helped to establish it in the world, if you will. I'm all about making things look like they belong, and whether that be placing an excess amount of gardening stuff around it, or whether it be like a foundation like this, it just helps to plant it there. And that I was really happy with how that turned out as a result. Now, with this build as well, as I said, I always had a plan with how I actually went into this build with a pretty decent plan as to what I wanted. I wanted about three exhibits on the lower floor in a grid format. The entire building will be in a grid format, because hell no am I doing free-forming pathing on this building. That would have been an absolute nightmare. I simply was not going to have the patience for that in the slightest. But I wanted to do a grid-like format with a bunch of habitats on the bottom floor, but I also wanted to, despite it being a very modern building, I wanted it to have that have a bit of a lost in nature kind of feel. Like the building was trying to replicate the natural environment of the animals I was putting in these habitats. And unfortunately, I didn't actually have any idea as to what type of exhibit animals were going to go in the exhibit. So it was a bit difficult for me to choose the overall biome that I was going to work with. So I just kind of decided to make it very, very mixed, if you will. But the point I'm getting at here is that you guys will notice that there's sort of like this extra gap between the walls with the fences and the actual structure walls. The reason for that is that I wanted to put like a greenhouse feel in here. So we're going to line the external part of the build with a bunch of plants, and I mean an absolute crap ton of plants. The place is going to look like it's overgrown. But at the same time, it sort of helps to immerse the guests into this walk-in experience, if you will. That's kind of the vibe I was going for. I've been to, like, imagine like a botanic gardens kind of deal, right? Like you go in to a botanical garden, whichever city you're in, and there's just plant life everywhere all around you, and you're kind of immersed in the vibe. That's sort of what I was going for here. And believe it or not, after the recording is over, we, help to... I don't do this on the recording. I do this afterwards because I was streaming this and the game was showing signs of instability even after a restart that you guys are also going to see in this video. So I didn't do the custom sign that's seen in the end product, and I also didn't do the mist effect that you guys will see at the end too. But I do add some mist effects in here as well, and I also add a custom sign at the front to really make it look as though this building is not only a building in the zoo, but it's sort of its own theme. It's its own zone that would appear on like a park map, if you will. And overall, I was happy with that end goal. Now, yeah, as you guys said, you saw me use the ability to stop the Z fighting by making things their own group and essentially moving them inwards slightly of what the other wall piece is doing. So we just did that there with the windows. I hope that makes sense, but you guys have visually seen it, so that should help out a bit. I've also done it with all of the windows inside to sort of, assist with the stopping of the Z fighting and making sure that there wasn't any phasing of the windows on the walls. Normally that wouldn't bother me, but I've sort of become a perfectionist the more and more I play this game, and I'm more willing to sort of take a little bit extra time to really make the buildings pop just that little bit more and give them a bit of extra realism, if you will. So we're filling up the plant life areas now, just sort of making some mini gardens that help to break up the pathing and the exhibits and sort of give it a bit more of a natural look. I love oversaturation of plants in this game. Like, I will more than happily plant flowers and plants all over the shop to make the place look overgrown. I prefer that sort of, I prefer a zoo that has that more natural sort of emphasis rather than just being a bunch of pathways and brick and mortar, walls everywhere. So I think this helps to break up the wall a little bit, and it helps to, give the building just that little bit of extra life. And that's sort of what I want to do here. Now, one thing I haven't learnt how to do yet while building is stick on one thing until I finish it. As you can see, I put some modern day pillars around the building, and then I went and worked on the garden, and then I realized, oh, hang on, I haven't finished that other thing I was doing. I better go do that now. It's certainly one of my things that are left to be desired when it comes to building. I mean, hey, I'm literally working on structural stuff again before I even finish the plant work that I was doing earlier. So it's something I need to work on when it comes to building. I'm sure you guys have noticed it in my videos, and I promise you, at one point, guys, I will hopefully get better at this. Now, you're seeing me work a lot with these archways here, and I promise there's a reason for it. There was one thing that I didn't really work out properly with this building. Despite how much planning I did in advance, there was one thing I didn't work out from the get-go, and that was how the hell I was going to make the stairway move up into the second floor with the confined space that I had. You'll see me in a few minutes here really spend a heinous amount of time, and I mean a heinous amount of time, trying to work out how I'm going to do it properly and how I'm actually going to make this work. And it ends up being a total shambles where I actually have to rebuild quite a lot of the stuff that I had done previously. But we'll get to that in just a moment here. Another thing I haven't learned with building, and it's something that I definitely do need to learn, is that I need to learn that I need to finish things on the ground floor before I start working on things on the top floor. As you can see, I haven't finished the gardening yet. I haven't even, laid out my path work or anything like that, just to make sure that everything works fine. And here I am like a total numpty working on the second floor and trying to get the groundwork laid out for the goddamn eatery. Yeah, look, sometimes Cammy is not a smart cookie. People on stream make sure I am very well aware of that. So, yeah, look, mistakes were made, and you're going to see me really fluff about in a second here with the plant life downstairs and the path layouts as we continue this build. One thing you will notice here is that I do change things out. I had always intended for the path work at the top end of town, like on the roof here where the food court's going to be 12 meters in width via the grid system. But I decided that with that layout, it wasn't really going to work out for my liking, only because, right, it simply left the pathway inside the building to be too thin. It was too thin, and it was too crammed up against a wall that was going to appear to be really, really too high for where it was. So I decided to scrap the idea and make the eatery upstairs only 8 meters wide, and basically give myself a little bit more room to play with inside the building, and maybe even work in a bit more of a garden upstairs there as well. Sometimes working on the fly, guys, you can go into any of these with a total plan, and sometimes it's best just to, makeshift it a little bit and come up with something a little bit different. I finally moved back onto the plant life, and as you can tell, as I said before, I am totally winning in this. There is no degree of biome specificity, no degree of specific bioming, or even like any specific continent existing in here. This is a total shambles when it comes to what biome this is actually going to be. But I liked it. It's not exactly what I'd call the most realistic thing in the world, and this is coming from someone who was literally talking about grounding their buildings in realism earlier. But to be honest, I was on a path. I wanted to make it look as colourful as possible, and sticking to a particular biome just simply did not allow for that to happen. So it allowed for me to sort of make up a bunch of corners of varying plant life, of different textures and stuff like that, and I was really happy with how the end result turned out. Hell, sometimes even using water reeds that don't exactly belong in these in a grass-filled area, but you know what? We're doing it live. We are doing it live at this point. Now, I also run into a bit of an issue here, a bit of a realization, if you will. I'd only ever intended to let the pathway only extend up by 1 meter on the height side of things. But then I realized that with my angled glass roof that I had planned to put around the rim of this building and act as sort of like a greenhouse-like feel, the path wouldn't be high enough to view over the glass railing or the glass roof. And I thought, I kind of want people who are up here to have a bit of a view. I know that guests don't really take view unless it's looking into a proper habitat into account when they're visiting the zoo, but again, realism, and I'm creating like a double-edged sword here for myself because I'm talking about realism and then putting multiple plant lives together, so sue me. Yeah, so I had to raise it up another level, and I was pretty happy with the decision overall. Once again, there's me flooring in the goddamn place before I even have a chance to, measure things out properly and actually, put in the paths, put in the light systems on the ground floor, and, put in security and information boxes. Look, your boy's not exactly entirely with it from time to time, I'm not going to lie, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, dearie me. But on another note, guys, look, I just want to take a moment to celebrate this game, right? Like, as someone who played Zoo Tycoon on an absolute, it was one of their favorite games back in the day, not going to lie. And then this game came out. This game has honestly made its way quickly into my top 10 games for the decade. And that's just because of how much detail and love clearly went into it. The Frontier team behind Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo have done an amazing job at taking what worked and making sure that they stuck to that formula, but revived it in a certain way. And that's certainly how I feel when playing this game. They've taken a huge amount of detailing towards the animal side of things, and they've really allowed for you to create anything you want in regards to building a proper zoo. Like, this in Zoo Tycoon back in the day would not have been possible, but they take the premise of Zoo Tycoon and make it 10 times better here. So they've definitely done an amazing job. Now, I'm basically looking at this point doing a mixture between old and new. As you can see, I've used the classic glass beams, if you will, but I've instead used the modern glass the modern glass walls as a second floor here, and I'm also using limestone on the second floor as opposed to using the plaster that we used on the ground floor. And I've learned that a lot of my buildings that you'll see around the zoo that have existed prior to me sort of really getting out and trying to build a lot more is that I've been really relying on using a simple palette that only uses, you know, 1 or 2 building types. And I'm slowly learning that the way to create some of the most detailed and exciting buildings overall is just to really get out there and explore what your options are. Sort of take the different materials and just see what works. Like, to me, this style of wood and limestone really work well together. And then when you use plaster with stone on the ground floor, they work together too. And when you use certain materials and break them up accordingly, it doesn't really matter what theme they come from, they're all still going to work together at the end of the day, just in their own unique way. And it's up to you to create these unique sort of, like, using the details that are available in the game, create these sort of different separators, these different reasons for these building materials to come together into one final package. And you, my friend, have got yourself a much more detailed building that is a lot more believable and just looks a whole lot nicer than what it would have done so before on just one material style. Like, my first ever food court, I primarily relied on using the standard modern wood that we're using here in this build, and we relied on, I think, the the wooden panel roofing, and that was it. Like, that was all that building was made up of. But it's just simply, it lacks, when I look back at it now by comparison to these sorts of builds, it lacks so much flavor and so much style and design, and it looks ugly by comparison to a building that's got so many different elements working together. And even by adding these little limestone lips to the building, they connect the glass roofing with the wall in a unique way. And when we add these modern pillars onto it, the limestone barriers don't end abruptly now, they have a reason to end. And I think that's part of the what's the word I'm looking for? The theory, if you will, behind building like this in this game. If you give something a reason to end and join it in a way that looks believable, then all of a sudden having these different materials come together doesn't look so jarring anymore. You don't have to be afraid of it, if you will. So yeah, that's my top tip of the day, if you will. Now, at this point, again, this is my total distraction, my ability to be distracted, coming into play here. I'm looking at sort of detailing this wall, seeing what we can come up with, and seeing how I can really make that wall stand out in a certain way. But then instantly I look at this and I go, you know, I should probably finish off this. Instantly delete it, realize that I should probably look at working on a roof, decide to go with a flat panel roof, and then decide completely straight away. I will not lie, this is sort of when the plan went straight out the window, because at this point I started really improvising. My floor plan was now on the floor, if you will. It was there, it was decided upon, and now I was sort of toying around with what exactly I was going to do to give the building a bit of extra life. Once again, using these modern pillars. Again, I love these modern pillars. They look so neat, so professional, so decent, that I can use them anywhere. I could really use them in every build I use. I know I probably shouldn't do that, but no comment. I love them too much. I love how well they connect up different building materials so easily, and using them as a way to separate these glass panels just to make it look as though there's something supporting the roof other than this flimsy potential piece of glass. It just gives it that bit of extra life, if you will. And again, I've gone from working on a roof to detailing, and now I really wanted to, you know, utilize the same limestone design that we did on the balcony for here, and I was really happy with that. And I figured it actually meshed pretty well with those modern columns there. They work so well with everything. I can't fault them. I really can't. They just seem to mesh well with every single little build that I've done so far. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I build in a way that lets me use them in a way where, you know, they can be adapted to everything that I come across. But I don't know. It just works. And I'm also gonna adopt the same style that we did with the black bear habitat in using them as a, what's the word I'm looking for here? Sort of like a roof liner, if you will. Sort of something to separate the the limestone wall with the limestone roof and just edge it out a bit. Because, you know, that's what we're about here. Making things look real. I think also realism is the buzzword of the day. If you guys want to play a fun drinking game for your New Year's Eve, go back to the start of the video and take a shot every time I say realistic or realism. I guarantee you'll be sloshed a lot faster than what you would be if you would have gone out and, you know, gone clubbing and stuff, and you would have done it for a fraction of the price. Oh god, I'm pretty sure I can't say that on a video about a game that's, you know, on a video that's about a game that's about G-rated. But here we are, mistakes were made, and to be honest, I have no regrets. So now we're just doing the final touches here of this second floor here, making use of these Planet Zoo roof trimmings. I've found a lot of uses for these. They're a very versatile piece in the game, and I definitely can recommend, I would recommend people use them more often than not. They have the capacity to really be used for anything, to be honest. And again, this is sort of at the point where I'm really starting to improvise. Now, I never planned to have a garden space. In fact, I was actually planning on having the path up to the food court go, basically have a walkway up to the food court in between each of the shops in those little slots that you're seeing. But I decided that would look a bit too chaotic. I wanted to organize it out by having a garden up here instead, making use of the mulch, which if you're building a garden on the second floor really does help you out quite a lot in just making the garden look like it belonged there. Playing around with putting some trees in, sort of mixing it up here, using different biomes, trying to work with the height that I had available to me, and yeah, just basically making the place look natural. Again, this is very much a building that is aiming to immerse my guests into a place of it being a natural look. And I was very happy with how that turned out. Making use of the same Planet Zoo wooden planks that we did on the bottom floor with the exhibits, and sort of using that as a way to mimic, you know how like when you guys go to a zoo and there's always like, especially for these exhibits or these habitats, if you will, where there's like a fence stopping kids from going up and touching the glass on the exhibit. That's kind of what I envisioned using that for there. Just giving it that bit of extra sense of, again, realism. Sort of making it so that, you know, a kid can't come up and start touching stuff that they really shouldn't. And now this is where I really let my creativity run wild, because this was actually not a planned portion of the build by any stretch of the imagination, and I'd like for you guys to bear with me as I explain this, because I know I'm not going to do it all that right. But you guys know when you go into like an aquarium or anything that you know, has like a, you know, the beetle and the spider exhibits and the snake exhibits, the frog exhibits, those sorts of exhibits, they're really tall sometimes, and they've got that extra bit of height to them. You know, in this game, the exhibits, or the exhibits are not that tall at all. They're quite short, in fact. So what I decided to do was mimic the idea that they were actually higher than they really are by building these glass cabinets, if you will, above them, and just putting a whole bunch of nature in them to sort of give them the idea, give it the illusion that they did in fact stretch higher than they did. And it's not functional in any way, shape or form, but I think it added something just a bit unique. I was quite happy with it. It's very much an aesthetic thing only, but I don't know, it just sort of gave it that little extra something. And now we move on to, speaking of, you know, functional versus aesthetics, let's get to the pathing here. Now, I did plan this out. I planned for there to be a three staircases up to the second floor in a grid-like format that then split off in two directions for people to go up to the second floor in. Now, I thought this would work great. It would be functional. The guests would have a lot of traffic space to get up and, up and down from the second and third floor. But I quickly discovered that the building and the layout that I had done up here just simply didn't accommodate for that at all. I would end up having the path move right up against those glass roofs that I just placed, which in turn would have meant for a really, really awkward wooden panel to come out of the roof, and I just wasn't aesthetically happy with that at all. And I know I should be building very much for functionality here, especially considering that I have seen what an overly used path looks like and how clogged up guests can get on it, but at this point, I didn't really care. The building was basically done, and I was not in no mood to reconstruct, if you will, the entire thing again. So I essentially decided to bite my tongue and really focus on essentially taking the design and reorganizing it a bit and sort of looking to instead build the pathway in a different way. And I decided at this point that I would have a single staircase walking upwards, a single staircase from the base floor moving up 2 meters, and then it would split off into two staircases moving up an additional 2 meters as well up to the second floor. Again, it wasn't really what I'd envisioned at all, but to be honest, it's less functional than the original plan, but it works. And I also decided to take that greenhouse look and apply it to the second floor as well before putting essentially an entire, basically by essentially putting making the entire roof beyond that small indent there a metal cladding roof. And I think the metal clad works with what we had overall designed, and I just had to make these extra glass cabinets above these 3 exhibits just that little bit higher, just to sell the idea that they extended all the way up to the roof. And I was, again, quite happy with how that turned out at the end of the day. I think it worked well, and I was I was excited for the final product here, very excited, and was having some issues with the centering. That's something else I also learnt about, another mechanic I learnt when building this building here. I learnt that if you press the F key when you've got an item, you can get it to center directly against an item that you have got it hovering over. So say, as for example, I had my pillars there. I had my cursor for those pillars directly above the pillars that were already placed. I pressed F and it automatically centered them directly where I wanted them, directly on the X and on the Z axis. So that was actually a very nifty trick I learned by watching one of the, I forget which YouTuber I was watching, but that was a really, really helpful thing to learn. So very, very much happy that I was able to take that opportunity and learn a tip or two. Again, when it comes to building in this game, it's not about, there's so much detail you can go through with building these sorts of buildings, and I feel as though the way you build these sorts of things without making it feel so daunting, because let's be honest, the building in this game, to make it look excellent, is going to feel pretty daunting for most people. The way to make it undaunting is to literally learn the mechanics and learn how to essentially just learn how to do things efficiently. Learn the key bindings, learn how to, place down, if you're looking at placing down multiple of the same item in a straight line, for example, and then mirroring that on the other side of a building, place it all in one line, copy paste the entire thing, and then move them all on the X-axis so they all line up. That's just the way to do it, and it's the way to get around it very, very easily and sort of simplify your process. I feel as though that's the biggest thing that people are going to walk away, from this game, having to learn the most, is simplifying your process and learning exactly how to make the most out of your building, essentially. Now, this is when I started to work out the pathing system for the staircase. Again, it's not the cleanest staircase I've ever built, and it will never be the cleanest. But at the end of the day, I was it worked with the design I'd come up with, and that's all I could really ask for at this point. Definitely not my finest hour when it comes to building in this game, but overall it was a it turned out okay. It turned out okay. It's not my happiest moment with this building, but overall I thought it was well justified, the final decision. And I'm not gonna this is my inner perfectionist coming out here, right? I'm never ever gonna see that back side of the building there. Probably never ever. But there's a glass roof there, so I know if I look through that glass roof and there's no plant life in there like there has been with the rest of the zoo or with the rest of the building, I'm going to hate myself later. So I decided to quickly get it fixed up and make sure that it was not going to be a problem. Now at this point, I was basically done with the general build. I decided to basically save it as a blueprint so I could put it on the workshop later. Once again, if you want to, put this build in your zoo, you are more than welcome to. You're gonna see a few additions made to it after the time lapse here stops. I basically do a custom sign for it. I essentially look at doing some plant life around it, making it look embedded in the zoo, and I haven't included that in the workshop file because, well, quite frankly, you guys are probably going to have a different theme zoo than I am, and this may or may not fit there, but at least you're able to, work with the plant life a little bit easier. I also made a bit of a critical mistake here where the floor was a bit too high, and it ended up finding itself clipping over the path on the food court. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to 86 that entire thing there and get it all sorted. And we're essentially coming to the closing side of this video, guys. There is one issue that you guys will notice with this build too, and I hope it doesn't bother you as much as it bothered me, but the path on the second floor, when you're looking at the exhibits and stuff like that, it actually ends up seeping through the bottom of the bottom of the wooden floor that I put up there because, quite simply, the paths in this game have a little nook that extends under them when they're in like a bridge-like format, and yeah, I completely forgot about that at that point, which kind of sucked. It doesn't bother me too much, but it's just there enough to be like, I could have made this building just like, 2 meters higher on the second floor and I wouldn't have had that problem, but yeah, look, it didn't bother me at all in any way, shape or form enough to the point where I was really unhappy with it. Anyway, guys, that kind of wraps up the time lapse of the build, if you will. At this point, I'm just putting pathing in, I'm going to put bins in, lighting in, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to leave the time lapse here, and I'm going to leave you guys with essentially some cinematic shots of the building in its final form, with its lighting, with guests running all through it. I had to quit the game there mid-time lapse due to the game starting to lag on me, but you guys are going to see it all now with the animals inside. So as pros, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm going to leave you with some of these shots. If you guys want more Planet Zoo content, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys all have to say, and it was certainly an absolute gem making this video for you guys. I'm really enjoying doing these Planet Zoo time lapses, and I look forward to making more for you guys if you enjoy them. Once again, guys, hope you've all had a safe and a happy celebration for New Year's Eve, and a happy 2020 to you all. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish in the new year. If you guys want to see that journey with me, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I look forward to seeing you guys all in the next video. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.